Hey guys, so as you know, we are talking about mastering low light photography. So before you step into the video that I've prepared for you, I wanted to show you in person some of the gear that I use for low light situations. So there are four types of lighting scenarios that I use. So obviously the first one is no flash at all, no additional lighting. I just shoot with my camera in manual and use my settings to expose for the scenario. Now, if you're gonna be using no flash at all, you wanna make sure in a low light situation that your subject is pretty still or maybe having the first dance, right? And you wanna make sure to use that light accordingly. Now we're gonna dive into this deeper in the video coming up. And then the next type of lighting that I use is a flash. And so I have the Canon 600EX RT. And with this flash, if it's, getting ready for the reception, the light is going down, or maybe I'm stepping into a dark ballroom or something like that, I will go ahead and I will put on my flash, okay? And even if I'm gonna be shooting no flash and just shooting manual with my camera, trying to get that soft, natural look, I will still have this on here because I want to be prepared. And there comes a point, especially in outdoor photography, with the low light as the sun sets and it gets darker, you will start to need a flash or some kind of light for portraits because you're going to start to get shadows. So for that reason, I will just be ready, have the flash on. Okay, but for some of those intimate moments, more artistic shots, and the light is, you still have enough light, or maybe there's enough ambient light in the room, okay? You can try using no flash. Again, you want your subjects to be not moving too much, all right? Now, when I do use my flash, I wanna make sure to show you this. So I have had my flash for so long that it broke. So whenever there's a white card that pops out and it kind of bounces the light back onto your subject. And so when I lost it and when it broke, I had to do something. So this is what I bought. And this actually works better than the little card did. I am obsessed with this and I love it. So all you gotta do, oh, and I don't know the brand because I've had this for so long, there's no brand on it. So, but if you search B&H, they will have, if you just search lens hood, that should pull it up. Okay, so you just attach it like this. And you never want to point the flash at the people. So, that's not going to be fun for them. And it's also going to be really harsh on their skin. So I pretty much have it tilted like this if I'm shooting horizontal. And then if I'm shooting vertical, I will tilt it kind of like this. So it's still kind of at an angle. And what I'm doing is I'm bouncing the light. And so that way it kind of spills all over the room. But it's still going to hit what is most in front of you. So we're going to get more into that in the video. All right. Now, for 90% of the receptions, you can use either no flash or a flash. There are so many different uses for different light boxes and other things like that, like studio shoots, right? But like for a wedding day, you're kind of run and gun, you have a lot going on and you want to be prepared. You need to be able to move anywhere quickly and be able to take awesome shots. So for that reason, 90% of what I shoot at receptions is going to be with a flash or either no flash and just shooting manual. Okay, so the next two things that I'm going to get into here, this is more for shooting film, and then if you have an extra budget, you don't need it, but my husband does video with me, so they have this awesome video light, and so I do use it from time to time. So since I'm talking about low light and things I use, of course I want to share that with you. This is the Aperture Pro video light. It looks like it's the 120T, and I've really been able to get some great shots using this light right here. So they will point it down onto the dance floor, and sometimes it serves as a really great fill light, and I can shoot without my flash. It opens that ability for me, so that's pretty fun because it kind of just fills the room with a little more light. And then also, when you're shooting at a reception, they'll have all those different colored stage lights like green and purple. And so this is a really neutral light that kind of helps to diffuse those colors a little bit. So I love this light. And so we're gonna go over that, but you don't need this light per se, but we'll cover it just to make sure I'm as thorough as possible with you. And then also, this is my Contact 645. So I do shoot black and white film photography. So we will go through that. And the reason that we will talk about the LED light, this is what I use, it really creates an awesome contrast against the skin, the hair, and also the background. And so that's pretty important whenever it comes to those black and whites. So I don't use this with digital. This is just for film, okay? And so that's it. I am so excited to show you what I prepared for you. And just so you know, we are working on getting some more thorough behind the scenes for the future. So I'm super excited to be taking you through an entire wedding day one of these days coming up soon. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, or if there's something you want to learn about and you have something specific in mind that you think might help you, I would love to teach you. So don't hesitate to reach out and I will plan something awesome for you. But I hope this is helpful, and here you go. Now, for most of us, I think we would all agree that natural light is definitely preferred, right? Like, you have so much more control over your image and your use of light in natural light. And of course, there is an art and a science to that, and it's very important to master it. But as soon as I started doing weddings, I quickly realized, okay, Marissa, you're not going to be able to rely on that beautiful natural light anymore. And I had to adapt and evolve. And quite honestly, I had to master low light. And so I have found that there are so many things out there showing you what to do with low light. And so I think that a lot of them are very, very complicated and complex. And in wedding photography, you are on the go, you have to move quickly, and you're in very tight spaces. So a lot of times you're not going to have time to incorporate all these different lighting scenarios. So I'm going to give you some quick tips and some behind the scenes on how to actually make your images cohesive from start to finish and really producing a high quality, beautiful, timeless product and image to your clients. All right, so here's exactly what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about low light without a flash. Now, this is my favorite, and I'm going to get into that as well. Low light with a flash only, low light with flash and aperture pro video light, and low light with LED light only, okay? So there's 4 different types of lighting scenarios that we use in our business, and that's it. So let's first talk about low light without a flash. Now, the reason I love this one so much, for me, my goal is always to make my images look as organic as possible. I want my clients to remember their day and look at these images and feel as if they could step into that moment again, And that comes down to having the right skin tones and having the right tone of the image, right? So it looks very, very natural. And a lot of times whenever you add artificial light, you can lose that natural edge that you have to your photos that you have with natural light. And so without a flash, you can kind of keep that natural look going, okay? So here's the thing. Whenever you shoot with low light, you are going to have to, and not using a flash, the main thing that you're going to need to do is to have very little to no movement. Now this is important. Sometimes you can have some movement, but it needs to be minimal. So let's say you're on the dance floor, the lights are off, like everyone's, getting down and boogieing. You're probably going to want to have a flash, but if it's the first dance, the cake cutting, if it's, if they're in a church, and most churches will have lights on them at the altar, those type of scenarios, you are going to be able to use no flash, okay? So as long as they're being still, it's gonna work for you. Now, another thing to consider is that you wanna have a decent amount of ambient light. And with that light, ambient light meaning the lights that are on in the room, okay? So with that light, you wanna make sure that it is evenly lighting their faces. So even though it's not natural light, you still need to worry about shadows and things like that are gonna be unflattering. So make sure that you are looking for that in all day long, not just at night, okay? So whenever I'm shooting without a flash, and let's say it's in a church or low light, there are some settings I go to right away in my camera. So I'm gonna give those to you right now. So the ISO, if I'm in a really, really dark church, man, I'm really struggling. The The highest ISO I will have is 3200. But sometimes you can go to 2500. It just depends on the location and the light source. I keep my aperture at 2.8 about 99% of the time. So for all of this video, we're going to keep it at 2.8. And then I keep my shutter between a 30th or 1/125th. Okay, and it just depends. Now remember, the lower your shutter, the more blur you're gonna have. So I will tell you this, and I tell my students this in the Wedding Photography Masterclass all the time, that even though the back of your camera might look a little dark, with a faster shutter, sometimes that's better. As long as you're shooting in RAW, you can usually brighten that image up quite a bit, okay? So, you know, test out these settings and give it a go. Now, if you're not shooting Kelvin and you're relying on auto white balance, I want to tell you today, don't do that anymore, okay? So switch to Kelvin, and for a low light situation, you're going to want to try somewhere between 2500 to 3500. That's going to take those warm tones and cool them down and make it look more natural. But again, these settings, you can pop those in your camera and tweak it from there, okay? Because every lighting scenario is going to be different. So let's look at some examples, and then I'll have some behind the scenes for you. Okay, so here are some film images. Oh, and I'm going to show you me going back and forth from film to digital. And these are film, so I have a little bit of both for you. And so this had some very nice, now with black and white, one thing I want to say before I go on, you do want to make sure that you have nice contrast between the shadows and the skin, because if someone's skin kind of blends in, it's not going to be so good, and the black and white's not going to be as powerful. Okay, so here we have some really nice light actually coming from the church. Obviously it's nighttime outside, but this worked really great, and I was able to use it for my black and white. Again, their faces are pretty evenly lit. I'm not having too many dramatic shadows. Same thing over here, her coming in the church. Now, whenever I shoot in low light with my film, I use Ilford 3200, and I will shoot at a 30th of a second. So of course, here she is moving, walking into the church, and here they're kind of giggling a little bit. So there's some movement going on, but the key here is that you want to be as still as possible if you're shooting at a 30th, okay? Okay, let's move on to a digital image. Now this photo looks like 100 times brighter than it actually was. I mean, it was extremely hard to shoot in this scenario. I know you can see out in this window how it's blue. I mean, it was nighttime, so I have done a lot of work in post. Now, it didn't take me a lot of time, but it just a lot of exposure changed, let's just say that. So again, this is one of those examples where the back of my camera looked very dark, but I knew that I nailed the focus, and I knew just from experience what I could do with it in post. So a lot of times I'll find photographers will rely on the back of the camera so much, and this is why I'm bringing it up, because it is so important. So if you're looking at the back of your camera and it looks exactly like you want it to, you better be careful, because the probability is that you are blowing out your whites. So always be careful of those highlights in your image, the white tones, okay? So like all of this, we want to save those details. And if the image is just a little bit darker on the back end of your camera, that means that you will most likely be able to brighten it very, very much because it's raw, but you're also going to be able to save those highlights, okay? So here I'm using a 50mm lens, my Canon 5D Mark IV. ISO is 3200. I'm shooting at an 80th of a second, 2.8 Kelvin at 3000. Okay, so here we have a dark church. Thankfully, there is some light going on. And I have a behind the scenes for you. Very quickly, we'll take a little peek, and then we can go from there. All right, so here I am. And of course, I am trying to, this is me. And as you can see, we have all this light coming in, very, very helpful. And here they are. I had to walk around, and I am shooting film using the light available of them giving their rose to Mary. So if we kind of cut through here, all right, let's see, here they are coming down the aisle. Now, one thing that you want to notice, I'm going to pause it really quick. Over here, there's a lot of light coming in. So my settings are going to have to change from here to where, this is my husband actually, to here, okay? So we need to be prepared for that and be able to change quickly. And it's gonna come in the shutter. You're not gonna need to change anything else but the shutter speed, because we wanna let a little bit more light in as they come over here, okay? So we'll check out this image here. They're moving, they're coming down. Okay, and as you can see, I'm shooting digital, and then I have my film camera ready to go. So here I've switched to my digital, my film, and I'm kind of waiting for that moment. Oh, that natural kiss. Oh, here we go. Do not be afraid to ask your clients to do it again. They're so excited. You ask them to kiss. Oh my goodness. They are going to be so excited. They're going to kiss 100 times for you. Okay. So here I go. I just asked them to kiss one more time. Again, no flash, just getting that kiss. And I'm like, you know, being excited with them. You always want to be so excited. Okay. So that's a behind the scenes for what is coming next. Let's get back to our little lesson here. Okay. So as you see, this is the photo that I was able to snag of them coming down the aisle. And then also her at the altar. And here's that kiss, and here is them at the giving the roses to Mary. So very quickly, these two are digital, okay? And so I'm using an 85 millimeter. This is my favorite lens. It has the best sharpness, and ISO is 3200 here, okay? And my shutter is 320. Now this looks really dark in the back of my camera, okay? Especially at 320. And again, there is a decent amount of light up there, but the thing is this. I want to get them in focus, especially here. They're moving, you know? So it's super important that I nail that focus. And then same thing over here, using the Kelvin, my goal is to make it look very soft and very natural, but it's also very low light. Even though there was a good amount of light up here, if you compare this to natural light, for a lot of photographers, this is challenging. So I hope this is giving you guys some empowerment and feeling like, okay, you know, I don't have to be afraid of the dark, and I can shoot without a flash and push my ISO to 3200 and really make it happen. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this one. And so I have the behind the scenes of this. This image right here is extremely dark. Although you cannot tell right now, let's check it out. Got handy dandy behind the scenes for you. And so here I am, and I am shooting. And let me tell you this, anytime you're outside and you can see the lights from the headlights shining, it is dark. See the glow coming in? We are still shooting these family photos, okay? So this is the type of light that I'm working with. Now, I wanna show you, let's back up here. You see how there's light, there's shadows and light coming in here? Just over here, there is a very strong light pole. Okay, now as the sun is setting and it's getting darker, what was happening is that light was creating very strange shadows on them. So just like I would use natural sunlight to put the sun behind them, I'm going to use this light here to put behind them. And that's going to allow me to get more even skin tones. So that's why I had done that. Okay, see if there's any more gold here. Again, just holding very steady, using a lower shutter speed, and really opening it up to get as much light in as possible. Okay, so let's take a look at those images. All right, so believe it or not, see how dark that is? This image right here was in this light. So it's kind of crazy, but that is what I got. And again, it's because I did not overexpose it. I did not underexpose it. I exposed it exactly how it needed to be. And from there, I have the full control in post to brighten it up as much as possible. If I had overexposed, it would not look as organic, and it also would not have details in her fur. Same thing with this image over here. Now this one is complete blackness outside. I mean, it's we have the string candles, not string candles, the string lights, the ones that you had, these right here. Okay, so both of these are digital. This one here is a 50 millimeter. ISO is 1250. Shutter is 200th of a second, and aperture is 2.8. Here we have the beautiful flower girl. Lens is an 85, ISO 2500. Shutter is 80th, and aperture is 2.8. All right, here is another one that I am shooting without a flash, and I'm in digital, and it's 85 millimeter, ISO 3100. Shutter is an 80th of a second, and aperture is 2.8. So let's quickly go to that. I believe that that is next on the behind the scenes. And one thing that I want to point out is that let's see, here we go. Okay, so here I am. So I have my little doodad to bounce the light, and I'm not actually using the flash here. So whenever you go into first dances, or let's say it's a spot that you haven't shot a lot. Now this spot I have shot very, very much. This is Race and Religious in New Orleans, and I've shot here countless times. But you always want to be prepared. So whenever I shoot portraits of people at nighttime, I will use my flash, because generally you're going to have a lot of shadows, and we're going to get into flash here in just a minute. But in this situation, I want to be prepared for both. So that is why you can see that I have this little doodad and flash up ready to go. And so, you know, just constantly moving, looking for the right angle. You know, you have people moving all over. We have Devin and Chris shooting, and I'm trying to get that magical moment in the middle of all of this going on. And when you do shoot, you definitely want to be as still as possible. Okay? All right. Let's get back to it. All right, what do we have next? Okay, so if you have been in our free education portal for a while, you will have seen this photo. We did an editing tutorial. So here's another example, again, using that ambient light that is already in the room. It is pitch black outside, and that's all I'm using is the light in the room. Here is one more that you also will have seen in the editing tutorial that I did with you. And this is them exiting, and the only light available is the headlight from the cars behind them. It is very, very dark. Just pushing that ISO and getting as much light as possible. And last but not least, we have a little detail photo on digital for you to check out. No flash. All right. So let's talk about low light with flash only. Now, this situation is one of those things where, again, you are going to have to run around and you're going to have be prepared for all different types of lighting scenarios, different pictures people ask you for. I mean, you need to be able to take awesome pictures every moment of the reception. So here is a situation where all I have is a flash. And if you notice kind of in the shadows of her chin, there's got some pink tones going on. That's because on the stage, they have those wonderful, if you've ever seen them, you know, they come in all colors. In this situation, they're red, but I think actually, if I remember correctly, this wedding in particular, it was changing from red to blue to pink to yellow, all these crazy colors. For the most part, you want to shoot that behind them and you're going to get great skin tones, but there are times whenever what's happening, that yellow, pink, whatever color light is shining on them. So you want to be prepared to handle that situation, right? So here I am, I just have a flash on and that is it, okay? So let's talk about this flash only situation. So this can be done indoors and outdoors. And your best method of positioning for the flash is going to be pointing it straight up. I point it straight up with a slight angle, as I've showed you already. And I bounce the light. Now that little hood thing I've already showed you, that is amazing and it makes the biggest difference. So you definitely want to have one of those. But even outdoors, I will shine the light upwards, kind of angled towards them just a little bit. And that's what I do, indoors and outdoors, okay? Because nobody really wants to have a light shining on their face, right? So, like I've said, receptions generally include very tight spaces, so you'll need a wide angle. And you're gonna also need to be ready and quick. So this is why a flash is super perfect. And you really don't need a ton of other lights set up. And so the reason that I say this, if you've ever seen a beautiful portrait, right? Like where the background is blurred, there's great depth of field and bokeh and it's just wonderful, right? Well, whenever you're shooting at night and it's a super tight space, you have your wide angle, you're not gonna have as much depth as you would with an 85mm, right? So that is why I personally like just a flash, because then my subjects are lit more evenly and the background is darker. This allows them to stand out in the image, whereas I'm not having to, I'm able to then, create the same feeling as I would with the natural light images with the nice depth of field. Okay, so when you're using your flash, you want to shoot manual, and you'll just move it up and down based on your desired brightness. Pretty simple. So, like 1/8 generally is very bright, and moving it down to 1/64 is is not nearly as bright. So it's going to be darker. Okay, so you're just going to play with that dial, take a couple test shots, see what you got, move it again and try again. Now, in general, you're going to want to set your ISO around 2000, your aperture around 2.8, and your shutter somewhere between the 30th and 200. Now that ISO can vary as well, so you're gonna wanna play with this. Also, the Kelvin will be at 4100 about 90% of the time. I always go to 4100 for Kelvin with flash. Okay, so a couple examples. Here we have a very low light situation outside. They're doing the second line, something very popular here in New Orleans. And I have just the flash. I don't have any other kind of light going on. And again, my goal here is to make it look as natural as possible. I don't want it to look like there's a lot of light or flash going on. My goal is to make it look natural. So I'm shooting with a 16 to 35mm, and I have, I believe it's at the 35mm here, 3200 ISO, 200 shutter and 2.8. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the reason that I did a 32 ISO is because I'm not really bouncing the light on anything per se. It is going upward and kind of filling this entire space, and it is adding light, but it's not the same as being inside of a room whenever you can bounce the light. So you won't need as much of an ISO at that time. Okay. All right. Let's move along. So here's an example. There's a lot of things going on in the background, but in this portrait, I really want to focus on them. And so this is that little example I was giving you where I was sharing how with the aperture, you know, in natural light, you have that beautiful blur in the background and your subjects are able to stand out. Well, in this situation with this wide lens and this flash, like in order to make it look like they are in focus and really bring the attention to them, this flash provides that opportunity. Okay. So let's look at one more. Now this is out on the streets, you know, running and chasing them down. And so you're going to have a hard time if you want to try to have all these different lights around you. One simple flash will do it. Okay. And here is one more. And before I forget, I'm pretty sure my sweet husband pulled a behind the scenes for you of that one. Let's check it out. Yep, there it is. Okay. So again, this is an example where you see the blue and green all over them. Look how cute. They're so cute. So I'll pause it here. There's a lot of blue light coming on them, but my choice was to see these lights over here. I don't want all that in the background. So I kind of had no choice but to shoot. Now I did shoot some beautiful black and white, but I'm shooting with the light on them, but my flash bouncing up, right? See how I have it bouncing up? This is going to bounce on all these white walls and come down to them, creating the image that I just showed you. Okay. And again, you can't even tell that I was handling that green light. You can see the green light, but not on them, right? Okay. So let's keep moving on. All right, so let's talk about low light flash with Aperture Pro Video Light. So this is one of those things where, you know, it is a bright light that shines on the dance floor and it does not move. It stays in one spot, and it can be challenging because sometimes the bride or the groom, it can be a lot, you know, right in their faces on their wedding night. So this is why being really great with just a flash by itself, bouncing the light, is going to be super helpful. Okay. So it is very, very awesome in terms of like filling the room. And also you can use this video light to not use a flash on a dark dance floor. Let's say the first dances. This is going to help you a lot. Okay. So let's look at this image. I have a little behind the scenes. Now we couldn't grab the exact moment. Okay. But my husband was able to still pull, to show you what I was working with. All right. And this is like before everyone's on the dance floor, you know, and they're just getting at it. So as you can see, let me pause it very quickly. So here we have this light here on the dance floor, and I am bouncing my light up and I'm shooting. Now with this situation, this is where I was telling you to have these colored lights behind them. It's going to be very helpful. And then also this light here is a nice neutral light, and it's going to give you a very nice, you can shoot into it and get a lens flare. Okay. And you see, I'm constantly moving around, getting different angles and moving around. Okay, whoop, we jumped ahead. Okay, one thing I want to tell you very quickly as well, this is the next behind the scenes I have for you, but okay, let's see. So I want to show you this very quickly. There are times, see, I have my 16 to 35 lens, and I will just hold it up above my head and angle it down and shoot on them. And it really, really helps get a super wide angle. Okay. All right. All right. So since it's a wide angle lens, you can hold it up and shoot it downwards onto your subject, and everything's mostly going to be in focus. So it works really well. And so just give it a try. I don't have too many pictures to show you that, but it is a fun tip. So, okay, here we are in the Canon 4 Mark IV. Let's see, I say it right? Canon 5D Mark IV. Okay. And I'm using my 16 to 35. And my ISO is 200. Shutter is 200th of a second, 2.8 Kelvin 4.1. So here we have my flash going on, and I'm having a little lens flare coming in, all the girls getting down. All right. Here's another example of that Pro Video Light. trying to get a very organic look, just very natural. And we had a lot of light on in the room as well, which also helped kind of just fill in the space in the background with light. Now again, just before we go on, I just want to show you here he has a little bit of a shadow. So you always want to be aware of how your subject's faces are going to be affected by your use of light. Okay. All right. So here we have low light with an LED light video. Now I use this all the time, but mostly for my black and white film. So if you're a film shooter, this is very, very helpful. I don't really use it too much with my digital. It's really more so for the film. It creates such a great contrast against the skin in the background. So whenever you want to shoot black and white, you need to be aware of the subject's hair and their skin and in the background and how all of it contrasts each other, okay? It's so important in terms of creating a strong black and white. Okay, so both of these images were using the LED light, and both of them, because on all of my nighttime film photos, I use the same exact settings. So I shoot with, gosh, I haven't told you yet, Contact 645, that's what I use. And I'm using the Ilford 3200 film stock, and I'm metering at a 1600 ISO, okay? At a 30th of a second and 2.8. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, most of the time I don't meter these because it's so dark that I just know that the 30th of a second, it's the lowest I can go before I really need to use a tripod, which a tripod can be very helpful using those super slow shutter speeds. But in my case, I don't have time to set up a tripod. I would love to, and there are times that I do. But on these cutting the cake and the running gun shots, and if you don't have a big team with you, you're gonna have to just shoot without a tripod. So that's why I go with a 30th of a second, okay? So here is another image. Now, before we go on, this is the one that I have a little behind the scenes for you. All right, so let's see what we got. Let's move right along. Okay, so here is the LED light, okay? And these are our subjects. And this is another reason that I don't use it very much. It's kind of a loud light, right? Like it's like right in their face and it's pretty bright. Now, I definitely let my clients know well in advance, not on the wedding day. I let them know in our phone calls 2 weeks before and also leading up that there is this LED light that creates these super awesome black and whites, and they know why I'm using it and they're totally down. You don't want to have this light out on their faces like that if they're not prepared. It's a little much, okay? So just keep that in mind, but it can create some incredible black and whites. And especially whenever you're shooting those exits. So again, just being very cautious and aware of where we have the light positioned, because we want to be very cautious of the light on their face, right? Look at him giggling. Oh, so cute. I love it. Oh, and you gotta love someone else had the flash going. We got a lot going on. Here's another example with the light on them, cutting the cake, getting that shot. Also, the video guys, they love that light. They love it so much. All right, so let's see where we are. All right. So yes, using that LED light, you can get some really nice black and whites. And here are 2 more examples of really awesome shots using black and whites. Now, LED lights. Now, these 2 images are sparkler exits, and I'm sure you know that, but they also result in more light coming from those sparklers. So that's also a very helpful thing in shooting low light. You're going to be able to use that light. So yeah. I want you to push yourself to be the best photographer possible. And, you know, in order to do this, you're going to have to master your skills in all lighting scenarios. It's going to be a lot of practice. So you need to get out there, you need to practice, and you need to practice more. And then practice more after that, okay? It's going to be a long road. But hopefully these tips have given you some insight on what your options are and what will work. And these are awesome, also things that are going to be very quick for you to go to on a stressful moment when you don't have time to set up all these different lights. This is going to work just fine, and your clients are going to love them, because my clients have for the past 10 years, and I've never had anyone ever have a complaint. So I definitely think that these little tips and tools that I've given you are going to help you really take advantage of the opportunity of making awesome images at night, because it is possible. So don't be afraid. Push yourself to be so much more than you are right now. You are doing amazing. Keep up the hard work. I am so proud of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.